to order the January 2020 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Ms. Herring, Mr. Nicely, Ms. Riviera,
Here.
Ms. Van Gundy, Councilman Keller,
Here.
Vice Chairman Coleman,
Here.
Chairman Hatton.
Here. We have 3 members who are absent and I believe have all notified staff that they would be absent tonight, so I'd entertain a motion.
I move that the absent members be excused.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Riviera,
Yes.
Councilman Keller,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Coleman,
Yes.
Chairman Hatton.
Yes. Number 2 on the excuse me. Number 2 on the agenda is approval of the motion summary of the HPC meeting held October 23, 2019. Was it really been that long?
Yep.
Has everybody had a chance to look at that? If so, are there any edits, corrections, additions, deletions?
I think so.
Can we, with 3?
You're only gonna have 2 because I'm gonna have to abstain.
And I was planning on abstaining too because
Yeah,
I
because you weren't
wasn't
there.
So
there.
we can take
Do you want to table it?
we can take the formal vote, it'll just come to the next agenda regardless. But we can table it either way, however you want to do it.
Let's just table it and we'll bring it up at the next one, next meeting.
So just need a motion and
I move to table.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the vote, please.
Ms. Riviera,
Yes.
Councilman Keller, or Councilwoman Keller, excuse
Yes.
me. Vice Chairman Coleman.
Yes.
Chairman Hatton.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, number 3, regular business, 3A, 2020-0026, a request by Surge Staffing for an informal review for a proposed storefront renovation at 67 North Sandusky Street, which is Zone B2, Central Business District, and is located in the downtown core of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Before I ask staff for their report, informal reviews are pretty much what they sound like, informal. So no action is taken. People can use them for a variety of reasons, but generally they come before us to kind of maybe ask for some questions, some design, but also to test the waters a little bit. But with that, I do want to point out that, again, it's not a pre-approval process. There are only 4 of the 7 of us here. So while we'll certainly be glad to give you maybe more input than you would ever hope for, it needs to be said that that doesn't mean when we have 6 or 7 people, if we have a full quorum at 7, at the meeting where you come formally in front of us, they're not locked into any decisions or discussions that were made before. Okay, so with that, staff?
Okay, alrighty. As you mentioned, the location is 67 North Sandusky Street. It is located in the B2 district, which is the Central Business District. And it is in the downtown core of our historic district, as are the properties all surrounding it. And then this is an aerial view. Some background information on the building. It is a contributing building in the National Register Sandusky Street Historic District, but many of the architectural and historical features have been removed. And over time, the storefront itself has changed dramatically. We have a picture from the early 1900s of a circus parade that was coming up North Sandusky Street near Central. And the building, what's that? Oh, golly. Oh, I just wanted to zoom in. Okay, well, you can see our zoomer isn't working.
Okay.
So you can see where the property is according to the arrow there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a 1950s streetscape that shows the location of the building and the other buildings that were surrounding it at the time. And those were eventually demolished to make way for a new bank, which is now Chase Bank. And these are the photos from 1999. This is a typical 1960s aluminum storefront, which is in place now. And the 1999 photo shows that there was also an aluminum canopy installed on the storefront in the area where the transom windows were that you can see in the 1950s photo. And we have a 2008 photo and a 2019 photo. And so from 2008 through now, the building the storefront has essentially not changed. There is an inset window along with a brick planter box installed in that inset. There is an aluminum entry door into the storefront, and then the entry door that's furthest to the north, that's the stairway up to the upper floors. And there are 2 residential units above the storefront. And you can see, again, earlier, more than likely in the 1960s, the second story windows were replaced with aluminum jalousie windows. And so they are different than the third story windows, which are the original design of the 6/6 double hung windows. And then the iron beam that you see is actually from the garage, from the 1950s photo that we have. So the garage, as you can see in the upper right corner, the garage actually had a drive-through right through the building. And that beam is right below the central garage sign. And so that beam is still in place to hold up the adjacent buildings.
Back to the previous slide, on the 1900s, we go, and we don't have a, pardon me, we don't have a real good
It's
full
fuzzy.
frontal shot of that, but I'm assuming the door to the upstairs has always been there unless the stairway's been moved, which occasionally happens. Has the door always been on the side, or is it in the center? Because I can't really see.
These look like they're double doors, and then this is a larger opening. So I'm not exactly sure what that had looked like, because when I looked at all of the Sanborn fire insurance maps from the late 1800s up until the 1950s, this was designated as a manufacturer of furnishings and furniture. So I don't know if that opening, had anything to do with deliveries or what.
Yeah, that would have been in the back, I'm sure, if they
Yeah.
needed something.
Yeah.
It's not unusual, and if you look at our standards, you see some of that in the index, that the ground floor business door was recessed because you wanted to be out of the weather. And
Mhm.
oftentimes then the door to the upstairs was brought back flush to the front of the building. And some of that's just to differentiate, but also to provide weather protection for the entry. And I kind of tried to look, and it's just, the one with the parade, you just can't really see to
Yeah.
be able to tell, unfortunately. Okay,
Yeah.
it was just, thank you.
Yeah, and this particular storefront just seems to be a very oddly designed
Yeah.
storefront.
Okay.
But again, not
It's-
knowing.
It
the
is difficult to
purpose.
tell, I mean, impossible to tell with any certainty, but to me, the larger, picture of the old storefront, to me, it looks like the old storefront, including, the entry to I guess the store area versus the access to the upstairs. They all look like they're fairly close to the front that they might not have been recessed. But again, it's hard to
Say,
tell
oh,
with
it's the
this.
50s and.
Yeah, it's hard to tell though with this picture, but to me, it sure looks like, you know, after this iteration in the 50s or whatever, that they recessed it for whatever reason when they put the milled aluminum structure in there and then added the flower box. And again, it's hard to tell, but that's what it looks like to me.
Okay. And, so the applicant is here this evening, and what the building owner and the applicant, would like to do, is to remove the 1960s aluminum storefront, in its entirety, and then remove that brick planter box and the plywood coverings over the transom window area. And if the prism glass happens to still be there, to repair it and bring it back into view, and install a new matte bronze aluminum storefront system to be flush with the building face. And so that would bring it all out to the sidewalk area. And then to bring in a few elements from the architectural standards, a new brick storefront window base would be installed. The transom windows would be reinstated, and then also on the interior, they plan on cutting back the ceiling, so the light from the transom windows, you know, could enter that storefront area. The brick storefront window base would be in the same color and type of brick as the upper facade. And the doors themselves would meet the standards of being not more than 75% glass in area. And then on the second floor, those aluminum jealousy windows would be removed, and a new wood aluminum clad windows would be installed. Double hung windows, also 6/6. And so there's two options presented. The one on the left is showing the transom window area in the clear glass, and then the one on the right is showing if those prism glass windows are still intact. And in reviewing the project with the city's planning and community development director, city staff is supportive of the proposed plan as presented. The applicant worked with the city in bringing in those additional elements that reflect the architectural standards. And then the windows will also be replaced to match, you know, the earlier designs. So the proposed storefront appears to blend well with the neighboring buildings, because the Chase Bank was constructed in 1979. So that's an infill building. And as mentioned earlier, three or four of the surrounding buildings were demolished to accommodate that bank. And we feel that the proposal would not detract from the historic value of the historic district or from the building itself. The applicant, you know, like I said, worked with us to ensure that that storefront blended well with the building too. And in the architectural standards, in the staff report, there are 2 sections listed that refer to the storefronts. And the first one regards the treatment of non-historic storefronts. And, you know, typically the historic character is determined from historic photographs, and we can see that this is an atypical storefront than our usual, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s storefronts. And in the last statement, in any situation, the Commission may consider changes in design necessitated by the adaptive reuse of the building or by the use of modern materials and building techniques. So the modern materials of the bronze storefront materials, you know, would fit that purpose. And then the section on the new construction in the downtown for storefronts, you know, talks about, you know, the transom windows, the base, and the doors, which the applicant has also pulled into that design. And staff also offers that similar storefront systems have been approved by the Historic Preservation Commission in the past. We have 3 examples: 9 East William Street, which is the Uppercut Barber Shop, 25 North Sandusky Street, which is Restoration Brew Works, and 28 East William Street, which is the Strand Theater block of storefronts. And the applicant is here this evening and is available for any questions.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind coming up, and then if you'd state your name and address for the record.
Oh, at this
Or,
table.
I'm sorry, right at the table.
There's a table.
You have to be there so the mic, sit down and the mic will pick you up. Sound like everyone else, as we all are.
It's just today, my voice is gone. Do you want business address? For the 67 North Sandusky Street. Mark Lundquist is my name.
Okay.
I'm representing Ryan Mason. He's purchased it under one of his companies. But,
Okay, and you are the,
I'm an employee.
okay,
of
okay.
Ryan.
Probably the easiest way to start, if you could kind of maybe talk us through the project, what your goals are, maybe, you know, how you came upon this design, and let's start there.
Okay. Well, the original building, can you go back to the old, what it looked like before with the planter box? It has a very 60s look to it, and really wanted to do as much as we can. We looked in that brick on the side is part of the building. There originally was brick there, but they must have replaced it at some point, so that's not coming off. But getting rid of the planter box would greatly improve, I think, the look of that. And the system that's currently there is recessed about 5 feet, I think. And then there's an inner room and then a door going in. So we want to remove all that and bring everything to the street again. And just try to make it look better. It's just in disrepair, I think, at the moment. We want to get custom windows to match the top floor to bring that look back.
So the new windows will be arch top and not have the fillers
They'll
in
look
there?
like the 3rd floor.
Great,
Or
excellent.
would that be yeah.
Yeah, it's there.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's the basic idea, is just to improve the look of the building and kind of get rid of some of the 60s elements that are in there.
Okay. Anything else cornice-wise? I know these projects always tend to expand. Is there anything else that you guys, it's always easier to do it all in one fell swoop, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think just the replacement of the
wasn't
glass to
awareness.
just clean it up. I think it's a lot more discreet than the the aluminum, the aluminum shade type aluminum,
mm-hmm,
rather than the bronze. We replaced our building on Morris Road with the same, and it looks really good.
okay. Signage, you're allowed a couple of different types of signs. If I remember, because I think we did a thing, you have a projecting sign, so that's considered a
I've-
auto projecting.
Okay.
You also have the ability to put like the old Bank One there. You can, if you do a awning, you can use the front of the awning for signage. Otherwise, normally the signage is in the sign band. And the sign band with you will be where your transom windows are. Now, you've seen places where they've hung those, you know, you can hang a sign in front of that. Just kind of wanted to get a feel for if you're comfortable with this design, it probably limits some of that sign band opportunity, right? If the transom glass is there, I'd love to have you open it up. I think
Yeah,
it looks good.
well, I really didn't consider the sign, because I've gone through, I think, at least one process of renewing the sign since I've been there, which the current sign, you had a picture of it.
Yeah.
I forgot to Photoshop it back in.
So,
But that's the current sign on the
Yeah.
lower right. Would like to do better than that if we could, so I certainly will consider that.
okay,
It would be a shame to see that the charm of the transom go away, but would also be nice to have a channel letter sign.
right.
Is that channel letter, or is that like extruded or whatever the term is for it? The bank one looks like it's,
Yeah, Bank One would have been prior, of course, not Bank One anymore, but it would have been prior to HPC when Chase came. Now, that was an old, is that an awning, Diane? I can't remember. They're even my
Yeah,
bank.
yeah,
Shows you how
yeah.
often you go to a branch anymore.
Mhm.
So if that is an awning, you can use the front part of the awning as signage. If not, generally signage is utilized in this, what they call the sign band, which is basically that, you know, if you think of it, the joists between the first and second floor.
mhm.
Now, you've got transom windows there. Now, I've seen cases where people will hang a nice, you know, wooden cut sign down in front of the transom windows. You also have, and it's within the standards, X amount of space that you can use on your glass. You already have an auto projecting sign. So you can have an auto projecting sign and a sign band sign, or an auto projecting and an awning. So you've got a lot of options. I just wanted to make sure, if you think back to, and I'm bad with addresses, but where the scaffolding is, where they're doing the big project,
Mhm.
if you've looked, it's kind of hard to see now, but in their old leaded glass, it spells out restaurant. So now that'd be an expensive sign,
Well, and
but it would be
that
very cool.
wouldn't really go with our current
Right.
direction.
Yeah.
We typically go with the channel letter sign on most of the buildings, so
Yeah.
if we did that, we would probably replace that top with just probably the same bronze aluminum across with a channel letter sign where the letters match the background material, and our color's orange, as you can see. We typically do the orange panels in the channel letter.
Yeah,
for
the
that.
channel letters as standalone, we don't allow in the historic district, but if those were put on a sign backing,
We've also
Mhm.
done reverse cut sign that was backlit with I think it was a fluorescent enclosure. We did that on Main Street.
Yeah, we don't allow
Mhm.
internally
Internally.
illuminated signs. At the
Oh,
So what about
illuminated.
illumination in general?
it's, you can do a neon sign,
wouldn't really match
or they would need to be externally illuminated.
So if you look around, you'll see like a gooseneck lamp generally is kind of
Mhm.
what most folks use.
Yeah.
Or lamps.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're talking about
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
ambient light around it.
Right, and the auto-oriented signs they're actually, they're a little higher up on the facade. And so with that, you can go up to 30 square feet. If you decided to go up like in between the second and third floors, if you wanted.
I probably wouldn't do that. I don't
Yeah.
think it would look right.
Yeah,
I would keep it within that area that is designated.
Yeah.
Typically, I don't like to go out to the brim. I like it to be a nice balance.
mm-hmm,
I think it's too much if it's overly sized.
yeah.
All right,
or-
that gives us a lot to consider. It certainly is the owner's decision
Yeah.
Mhm.
for that and whether he wants, but I didn't know that was an option, especially when we did our signage the last time.
And you can
Yeah.
work with staff on that. It's just always, you know, not that we don't love to have you come multiple times, but it's
Mhm.
easier if you think you might want to do it, to get it in, get it all done,
All
and
at
that
the
way you're
same
permitted.
time.
and you can just rock and roll whenever.
Okay, yeah, that
Mhm.
would be nice, because it
Okay.
does take quite some time to, even for signage approval.
Yeah, yeah, you could even move that, the sign you have now, I remember when you refaced it, and I think it's about a 9 square foot. And that, it's a pedestrian-oriented sign, smaller and lower, and you could actually install that, like, on that brick column, you know, to the north or the south, you know, and then that way you wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't block the view of the window. So yeah,
I'll
you
try
have
to
a few
render it
options.
When I get back. Is there anyone I can bounce it off of, maybe? Okay,
Sure.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just to see what it looks like, I would prefer better signage, because that sign is not the best. And you look at some of the earlier, you know, with those big box signs that are extruded plastic, and there's a
Mhm.
kind of a quality to those that are nice, and that hung, I think when it was I-Force, it was plywood. And
Mm.
it just doesn't look very good, the weather chips the paint, and
Right.
then
Yep.
it just looks poor.
Mhm.
So a question on the transoms, it looks like maybe you've prodded and poked a little bit, but you don't know.
The image of that awning pretty much looks like it's gone.
Okay.
And she sent that
The
a couple days ago.
1999.
It really looks like they just completely removed it. So I don't
Okay.
have hopes that it's there anymore.
I
If
just
it is,
wondered,
I'm
do you have a
gonna-
drop ceiling in there?
It comes down all the way, and we wanna
Right.
basically open all that up again.
So a lot of times if there's like a utility hatch, or I've even seen people that'll take a light fixture out and you know,
Mhm.
stick a camera up in there. Most of the time, if the transom, whatever's in there, they might have just filled it in with plywood, right? But if the leaded glass is in there, that would be a nice.
It would be a nice
Nice
feature.
find.
Yeah, there's definitely a style back then.
Yep.
My
Sure.
terminology's left me and my brain shut off at 5, I apologize.
No worries.
But certainly, I think just, like compared to the 60s attempts, they're short-lived, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
They don't have that stay. I mean, the quality of this building, you just don't see anymore.
Right. Well, the one thing, and I don't know, if you haven't, if you go out to the city's website, you can download the standards, which are
Mhm.
36 pages. And I kind of like one of the original folks was an architect, so he made a lot of drawings, which I think helps you kind of get, you know, because all the Italianate buildings are kind of the same, right?
Mhm.
The design is very similar. And so it gives you an idea by looking at those, oh, okay, that's why they did that, and that makes sense. So, I've talked a lot. Anyone?
Well, I had some questions, which you've actually kind of answered 2 of the 3 I had. One was, you are bringing the storefront forward, so it'll be
Correct.
essentially flush, which
Right.
I think is fine. There's plenty of that downtown, and I think that'll be fine. You had mentioned I guess the brick columns on either end of the storefront. You'd already looked at that.
It doesn't look like you
It
can do
doesn't
anything with
look-
that.
Because my thought was, if you could tie that into the brick that you're looking at using down below where you're replacing it with the
That's
planter.
what I'm trying to get rid of. That long brick just looks.
No,
like-
no. I don't mean the current stuff. I mean what you're proposing.
Right.
So from a design standpoint, you would rather not have the 2 flanking columns as brick?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the planter box is that too, and it's such a dated.
No,
Uh,
I guess what I'm asking though is, was there any consideration of actually replacing that?
Removing it.
Removing that and then
Um,
using the same brick that you're using?
That would be a big endeavor.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
because-
think more than my boss probably wants
Okay.
to do.
And that's fine, and
Yeah.
and again, overall, I really like what you're presenting.
Mhm.
That is certainly something I thought, well, that'd be kind of cool, but I
Mhm.
understand.
Oh, I would love to
You
get
know,
rid
there
of
are-
that, but,
Is that painted, or is it just a
No, it's
sandstone, limestone?
it's a light colored
it's
brick.
as thick as the brick, so they must have knocked out the original brick
They
and just
did.
replaced it with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
took a closer look at it, and they definitely removed all of the original brick and they replaced it with these 1960s bricks.
Yeah, if it were an option, I certainly would go.
Yeah,
with
and
that option.
I understand. And then just curious, in the renditions on the monitor, the glass looks like it's tinted blue. Is it actually gonna be clear glass?
It's going to be tinted, and I think, well, the main reason, do you have a picture of, like, a recent picture? The branch puts those really ugly long blinds in the window because the light is so intense, probably until about noon. So I think tinting the windows might help that situation without the need for blinds.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Some-
Unfortunately, we don't allow window tinting.
Oh, you don't?
No,
Okay.
in the
Well,
district.
if you take a look at the Strand windows, it's not a specific clear glass, it will darken a bit when the sun shines. So, the standards say it could be clear or opaque glass.
Yeah, opaque though, of course, is meant to be like an art glass or a historic wavy glass.
That wouldn't be
Right,
probably good.
right.
But-
And that may have something to do with your thoughts around the transom. It's also why a lot of people put awnings out, A, weather protection, B, additional signage. And it's not unusual that people, if you look around downtown, that they have transoms up there, but then an awning, I'm not trying to sell you an awning, but an awning, so the light comes in, but you're not getting that direct light. Now, you're lucky you're on the proper side of the street as far as not getting baked by the sun. The other side tends to get, since the way it faces, right? So, something just to think about. But I agree with you most of the time. If you look around, we don't have a lot of people that have window coverings, and some of that is by using an awning. It gives you some sun protection.
Excuse me, done awnings before. Typically, they're that same orange. I have a feeling that would fly, but
We might
Well,
have
The,
It does say
the
Gary's
Flying
Colors.
Pig Ale House has like a muted burnt orange, so I don't know if that would be,
we would have to do the same color that we use our logo in typically. But
yeah.
we're kind of toning it down these days a little bit, so we might consider changing that if that were the case. And we have done awnings on about 4 occasions, I think.
Okay.
And we've done a black awning. I thought it looked good, and we had the logo on the front, just in vinyl.
What type
Mhm.
of business will this be?
It's the same business, Surge Staffing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else, Joe?
Actually, those are really the big things for me. So, I mean, the other thing I would do is just comment that I think it looks like, to me, a lot of improvements, and overall, I like what you're presenting. The tenting, not so much.
Okay.
But, especially reestablishing the 6/6 windows on the second floor, I think is a huge
Yeah,
improvement.
with the true arch tops.
Yeah,
and give them the
so-
fillers.
That's all I've got.
Sharon?
I agree, I think it looks good. You might wanna look at the Strand Theater to check out their
No, I'll take a look
glass,
on my way out.
because you don't even think it's not clear until the sun's not baking you. So it might
Okay,
be
yeah,
something to
that
look
is
at.
a-
But good
Good.
design.
Thank you.
Lisa? Anything?
I think overall, it looks like a huge improvement to what's there.
Mhm.
And I think we really appreciate when business owners reinvest in our downtown, and I think the plan looks fabulous.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Do you have any?
I had a couple of.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
I just had a couple of things that I had jotted down. I want to give everybody else a chance to talk. Just a couple of things, and we talked about a few of them, the sign ban and signage, and making sure you just include that. I wonder if we look side by side, instead of brick down there, I wonder if you wouldn't consider using a thin cut sandstone or limestone.
Well, that was the original, that one I did first. and I tried to continue what was coming over from the bank.
Yeah,
Just to, but I wouldn't, initially I was thinking more of a modern material that looks like concrete, but we wouldn't have to do any reinforcement. You know, if you do a solid wall.
I mean, depending what's there,
Mhm.
most of the time, you know, the bricks are sitting on something,
Yeah.
or were, assumedly. You know, you can get limestone or sandstone, either
veneer.
one, cut thin and
Yeah.
basically mortar it on, and it doesn't have to be one monolithic piece. Obviously, you
Right.
can put joints in there. And that's actually more in keeping with, I hate to point chase, because obviously it's new, but if you look at the older buildings, they generally didn't have brick down there. And part of
Mhm.
it was, back in the old days, it just
Wood.
didn't hold up very well to the water, right? So there was spalling and those sort of things. So they generally kept the brick up higher. And when I look at the right-hand side, and I hate to kind of tie into non-historic materials, but A, I think it kind of looks a little bit better, and B, I think it looks more historically accurate if you don't have brick down there and if you used a material like that.
Can you present for the formal review, 2 designs?
Sure.
Okay, I might consider that, cause, you know, initially I was just trying to think what we needed a, you know, window wall.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just looked for
Okay.
reference next door and did the initial one, and then, you guys came back with the brick, which I kinda like better, it's warmer.
Yeah. And it-
Overall, and seems to tie everything in a little bit better to the
Mhm.
original building.
Right.
But, you know, I'm not opposed to the other either.
Okay.
Um,
And generally what you're doing is you're matching the original lintels up on the windows, which were,
We'll get a
Probably-
custom window made.
no, I'm saying, so with those foundation pieces, generally they were cut from the same sandstone or limestone as the lintels were.
Yeah,
So if you kind of matched your original lintels on those second
Got
or
it.
third stories with whatever material, again, if you used like a thin cut sandstone or something like that, that would tie the whole thing together. But just a thought. And
That
again, it's
one-
a little more historically accurate.
upper left, probably more than that, is pretty corroded. Would like to try to repair it, but I'm not sure what the options are for repairing.
Which ones, I'm sorry?
The upper left
This one right here.
is seen better
Oh, the
days.
lintel, okay.
Yeah, it's.
That's
busting
not,
apart.
for a good mason, that's not a real
Okay,
involved project. And
might consider that. I think it would make it look a lot sharper when it's done, you know, just to.
also keeps chunks from falling on people, which is a plus, right?
Sure, there's a piece of work that's
If you
like.
got it
that,
on, you
keep
don't have to
it
worry
weird.
There you go. The last thing I had, and probably my only thing with the whole project, is the two, obviously moving the storefront out is accurate, that's where it would have originally been. I wish we had the original thing, but I'd bet a week's pay that the original ground floor business store was recessed, just because they almost all were.
Mhm.
Now, occasionally you ran into those weird little spaces, and, you know, every once in a while there was someone that, you know, like a stable and the door opened out, which
Mhm.
obviously you can't do anymore. That's the only thing I don't like about this, is the two doors feel like a strip mall or a supermarket
Mhm.
side by side, right? It looks like they should open up. I realize they go into different spaces. The other thing you'll see if you look even downtown or at any of the old photos is oftentimes those doors were a different style to a degree, right? Because oftentimes the door to the business was glass, you know, put the hours on it, business name, see the business inside, whereas the upstairs generally tended to be living spaces originally. And so oftentimes that was more of a slab door, right? So in a perfect world, I'd love to see you recess your door to your business on the ground floor.
And by recess, just to give the impression?
No, I
that
mean, it's
recessed?
actually, you know, recessed usually 2 or 3 feet. If you
Okay.
look at any bit, about where it is right now,
Well,
right?
it's about 4, and that for one thing, the office is kind of tiny inside.
Right,
So I
right.
wanted to gain some more space in the process, but it's like a maze to get in there,
Mhm.
right now, because you have to go in and there's just a box with another door that leads to the
You're gonna
inside.
get rid of that though,
It's
right?
all gone, yeah, and that certainly would change things a bit.
Yeah,
But I think personally, I don't wanna see it recessed too much, but
Mhm.
you know, kind of thinking more of a compromise to recess like a foot or so, just to give the impression that it's a different plane, kind of visually give you the same sort of feeling without going 5 feet like it originally was.
Yeah, I don't think 5 feet, and generally, it's kind of, there's a scale, right? So it's generally recessed about the width of the door, not always. So if you have a giant door, 5 feet wide, that would be generally recessed more, right? You just create a bigger kind of vestibule. So assuming that's probably a 3-foot door, give or take, you know, a 3-foot recess. And then I think almost to the point where you want your door with the glass going into your business and maybe the one going upstairs. We have standards as far as you can't put slab doors on anymore.
Right.
But I'd like to see those two doors differentiated.
I mean, there's nothing to say that, I'm not quite sure, I'd have to play around with it, but, I mean, we can do anything with that wall. The door can be anywhere on there. I just did, because it's,
The
Close to
door
where
for
it
your
was
business,
originally.
you mean?
yeah, it
The
could be
ground
on the
floor.
left if you wanted it to be.
And that's why I wish we could see, it wouldn't be unusual, but even on that parade picture, it kind of looks like they were side by side. Most of the businesses put it in the middle, but not always,
Mhm.
right? And that's really up to you.
You know-
Wherever it works for your flow, internal, I think is, you know, we're pretty open on, because sometimes, you know, people are saying, hey, we've got a store here and we need to differentiate this. Put it in the middle, that's fine.
I think if it were in the middle, a double door might look better. It wouldn't be practical necessarily, but it would, I think, achieve where you're going with that, is to separate the, you know, the apartments from
Well,
the business.
that door's gonna stay where it is.
Right.
Right, and then if you wanna put another, just move that same door over to the middle
Mhm.
and recess it. And that would be, if you look up and down the street, that would probably put you in line with about 80% of the storefronts.
Talking about recessing the door or the entire?
The door, just the
Okay.
door, yeah.
Oh,
The
that's-
storefronts always, originally was built flush with the front of the building, and the door was almost always recessed.
Okay. I'll
And-
have to look to see if I can find some examples of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know, do you have the standards on your computer, Diane?
I was just curious about that, because I
What-
thought that I read in here that the plan itself as it is now meets the standard.
Well, that was staff's opinion.
Right, and on that staff analysis page, under the new construction for the storefront, it says store entrances may be recessed
I mean, I
three
can pull
to
them up.
6 feet.
Right,
If you can project
which,
those.
the thing about that is though, may be recessed isn't shall be recessed, so I
So,
think that's.
Here's kind of a standard, now this happens to be transitional, but you can see the doors recessed,
Which one are we putting in? This?
recessed door.
Where's
So
the
that's
page?
pretty standard.
Mhm.
Back, I don't know if it's.
I
there it
actually
is.
like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not quite the same
This?
proportion, but,
Yep.
It's similar though.
yeah.
Or even go
Do you mind if I
up to the
photograph that
downtown
on
corner.
the phone?
No, but these are also, they're out on the website.
Okay.
So you can go grab them. I was trying to see if they might have them.
What page are you
It's
on?
back in the appendix, so it's,
Well, what does it say on it?
32, I think. Any of these, that happens to be transitional, but.
What's the name of the document?
I can email it to
Okay.
you.
Sorry,
That'd
this
be great.
one? Or which one do you want? for
You can
the
start
next
at the
one?
beginning and flip, just at the beginning of the photos, it kind of shows, so there's I think a pretty good, you can't really see the recessed part quite as easily here.
Yeah,
If
I
you-
think that would look good.
She's gonna project it so everyone can see. It also just breaks up that flat storefront, which again is more modern.
It would break up the knee wall
Okay,
too,
let's
I
go
think,
down
which
here.
would look a lot better. Or not knee wall, but you know.
Yeah.
Just 1 second, please. Right here, start.
It's
Yeah, if you can
similar, yeah.
expand it a little bit.
I'll let Diane take over.
And actually, the one on page 30 is pretty good too. It happens to be a side-by-side, but it shows the recessed doors a little bit better. So look at that.
There you go.
Yeah, see, now that happens to be a side-by-side, so two buildings in one building or two businesses in one building. But that kind of gives you a better idea of the recessed
Mhm.
door that was pretty common in the Italianate
What do they
original.
do on the ceiling? Is that just a glass panel?
No, usually, so it can be, sometimes there's beadboard up there, sometimes there's tile up there, oftentimes there was, even a metal, embossed like they'd put inside. It's really up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a nice way to put, either a nice historic or period reproduction light in there. Some people just put in a recessed light, but to provide a little lighting right on your entryway
Mm-hmm.
is a nice thing too.
Yeah, because actually, if you look at 4 and 6 and 8 North Sandusky, those are inset entrances.
How, I don't know how the numbers are on that.
I go by businesses, I haven't seen
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
The Green Door Salon, Toujours,
Is it on the far end or down here? Well, 67, so it
Ju-
would be the
just-
side.
it's right
reference.
across the street from City Hall.
Okay, I'll
Yep.
take a look. on
Yep.
my-
The other, and she referenced it in here, so Restoration, the restaurant microbrewery, that's a new storefront, so it has the architectural bronze, but then it has a recessed center door.
Okay,
And they did things a little bit different from a restaurant, those two doors, kind of doors open, so it
Mhm.
open, which, you wouldn't want, but, so that might be a good one to look at too, cause that is a
Okay.
new storefront.
take some photos and take it back to my boss, see what his thoughts are on that. I do like that. It breaks it up. It's not just a monolith.
Right.
It's- Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Those were really the things I had. Like I said, I think this will be a really nice improvement, particularly like going the extra mile on the windows upstairs, and because I know that's not an inexpensive project to have the custom windows, but I think that's gonna make a big difference on how that building
Yeah.
looks from the street.
Bring it back to its original.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about colors? Are there limitations to the colors? I wanna go neutral
Mhm.
and fairly close to what's there.
Colors on
Window
the windows.
trim,
Yeah, it's in the standards. Traditionally, window frames and sashes were black. Doesn't have to be, but that was kind of a period correct. The standards basically prohibit garish colors.
So what I would probably do then is match the bronze.
That
with the
would,
windows above, and it would
Yeah.
tie it all together.
the one thing I always encourage people, and it's interesting because one of our members is at our Main Street, I think, Design Award dinner. Walk around. There's some really nice restorations downtown. Like you said, take some pictures.
Mhm.
Oftentimes if we're always walking around doing something, you don't always look up at the second and third stories, take a look at the ones, see what what they've painted, but by and large, people are kind of falling into that same palette. We see a lot of dark greens,
Mhm.
burgundy, so I think restoration
It's black.
is black.
Mhm.
Where is, what used to be the Beehive, I think that's still green, dark green,
Yeah,
so,
Hunter.
yeah.
and-
yeah,
Sealskin.
what's that?
Sealskin.
Okay, yeah, see?
We're changing to
Shopping
gray.
for colors.
Yeah, we're changing to gray on that one. And, yeah, predominantly black and gray has been the latest color selections. Yeah.
Do you think bronze would be
Fine.
close enough? I just think
Mhm.
matching, I think it would look funny if they were two different colors,
Yeah,
unless they were two completely different colors.
Yeah,
Um,
it matches the brick really well. So. Okay.
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 preparations for this formal meeting,
Mhm.
what drawings do I need? I'll have these, I did these myself because I ran out of time to get it from an actual architect, but what angles, I had questions about that. I mean, is this sufficient?
Yeah, normally, this is great. I mean, we
Mhm.
get sketches sometimes, so it's
Okay,
always,
so I really
appreciate
would-
the work.
Yeah.
If you're gonna recess, sometimes something other than just a straight-on angle
Okay,
where you
like a
can kind of,
Or
yeah,
even,
get a little depth.
A floor plan of that section of the
Yeah.
facade would be
Just to see.
helpful in terms of understanding scale.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we may, consider knocking some walls out in there inside, but that's
That's
Yeah.
another day.
outside our world.
Okay.
The only other thing might be, let us know on the windows, who your manufacturer is. You can either use wood or aluminum clad wood.
Mhm.
And obviously, if you're gonna go custom, it's not gonna be a cheap window anyway, so
Right.
I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, so if you have, for instance, if you want to say, hey, we want a sign, here's the lighting we want for our sign, take a screenshot of the website, the gooseneck, what color, those sort of things. More information's always better than less, right? And so we do everything from professional architects that come in with 40 slide PowerPoints to, unfortunately, occasionally the cocktail napkin. So we,
Some of the best designs are. I think the iPod was on.
there you go, that's
a
true.
napkin.
That's true.
Probably would go with something like wrought iron, something with some character, very historic in nature, and like a bell shape and pointing back. And that's kind of what's on the top of my mind. I'll probably take forever to find it online, 'cause I see it in my head, but.
Yeah, there's
uh,
several, again, just walk downtown and you'll see some of the just gooseneck lights that are
Mhm.
lighting up the.
But just
the signs.
something that has a little bit of, kind of a design to it,
Mhm.
rather than just flat metal,
Yeah, yep. Okay, staff,
Very good.
good?
Yeah.
We're good if you
I
are.
really appreciate you, taking
Thank
away
you.
from your dinner for this.
I ate before.
Oh, good. I've got
We
to.
appreciate your.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
As
you.
Councilwoman Keller said, we do appreciate your investment in downtown, and
Mhm.
it looks like you've got the makings of a really good project.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not my money, but hey.
Well, you
I
can.
certainly do spend a lot of
Yes.
it.
There you go.
So, yeah.
That's the
Things
fun
like
part.
All right.
Okay,
I
thank you.
appreciate it, thank you
You
very
bet.
much.
And Diane and staff can help. They'll reach out to me if they have questions, and we'll definitely try and get it set up so you're ready to go for the.
Yeah, I'll
Actual.
sit down and, figure out the signage first, and then I'll probably do a rendering in the middle like we talked about, and probably give you 2 renderings, 3/4 and a straight on.
Great.
See if that'll work.
Yep.
I'm anxious to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
As are we.
Okay, yeah, and so the next available meeting is February the 26th. Okay, and then I'll send you,
And this one's formal?
yep, right, this will be for the formal
You can come back for an
review.
informal, but assuming you want to move to the next step.
Yeah, and then so we'll have you fill out a new application with the $50 processing fee.
Okay,
And then I'll email that to you along with the full copy of the architectural standards on.
okay, great.
All right.
Can you repeat the date of that meeting?
Wednesday, February 26th.
26th?
Yes. Mhm.
Perfect. Is that also at 6:30 or?
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Great.
All right, very good. Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
All right,
You're
thank you.
welcome.
All right. Item 3B on the agenda is discussion of fiberglass clad windows. Since we only have 4 of us, we've kind of been trying to wait for a quorum on that, so I would say we don't need to take that off the table. I see that I skipped 1A, which is the introduction of Lisa Keller, our new council rep, so apologies for that. Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know if you drew the short straw, but you know.
Oh, she wanted to be with us. Yes.
Wow.
did.
Good.
Yes.
I still maintain that we're more exciting than the tree committee. I'm not sure,
No,
but I hope so.
I get pretty fired up about trees.
All right, number 4, staff comments. Comments from staff.
Nope. Starting off a new year, and a planning department has been very busy already, yeah, with new permits coming in, so
Good.
it's very good.
Okay. Commission member comments.
Just as an FYI, right now I am scheduled to be traveling next February 26th for work, so
Okay.
chances are I will be absent.
Okay, thank you.
If that changes, I'll respond when you send out.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Either way, I'll let you know.
Appreciate that.
I have
All
no
right.
comments.
Yes?
I
No?
have
Oh, no? None?
Thank you for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with you.
Belatedly, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, if we have no more comments or discussions, ready for adjournment?
I have
We are
a
adjourned.
question about the windows. I know you sort of tabled it, but I'm not gonna be around for a few more months.
Oh, okay.
We had a discussion about this a few months ago.
Mr. Hartman, I will need you to
Oh.
come up and say who you are, and although we know who you are, you
All right.
still have to do it for
I'm
the record.
infamous.
Yep, everything, address, date.
Steve Hartman, 4 North Sandusky Street. As far as fiberglass windows go,
Mhm.
because of me wanting to add windows, I did some research on them. Because I was a painting contractor for years, I very concerned about using those new materials. And I'm not sure about all manufacturers, but it doesn't seem like you can get them with the bottom rail any more than 1 3/8 inch. So I don't know that they would actually fit in anywhere, as far as a casement window maybe, but not for a double hung type window. And they all seem to have a textured surface to them also, which is not typical.
Right.
So I'm all for getting the better materials, and from all other aspects, they're far superior, I think, to anything that's out there. They're the next generation, but they're not gonna look the same. So that's just my thoughts
Okay.
on it.
Appreciate the input. You going somewhere warm for the next few months, I hope?
We live in Honduras half of the year, so we're not always here.
Ah.
On the beach where it's warm.
Okay.
Where in Honduras?
Where on the north coast, Laceba,
Okay.
city called San Luis Creek.
Okay, I've been to Roatan.
Oh, well, we can see it from our house.
Oh, really? Excellent.
If you want to host the next HBC meeting
We
down
could-
there, we'd be
Yes.
glad to come down in February or March.
You are more than
I
welcome.
don't know if is that in the city's budget? Maybe
Probably
not.
We will find the budget.
We'll have a
Accommodations
basin.
are inexpensive.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so that's why you don't see me all the time, but we're trying to come to every meeting possible, just to learn more about.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate the comments on the windows.
I will miss you next.
All right.
You'll be hearing from me in April.
Okay.
As long as you got web access, you can see us.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Little grainy us.
If things are really slow in Honduras.
Yeah, I'll be back to push your buttons and,
All right.
Safe travels.
hopefully do things better than you expect.
There you
That's
go.
our goal.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, we are adjourned.
Yeah,
I guess,
it'll be good.
7:29 now.
sure.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.